Hey folks, Andrew Chadwick here at Elite Training Academy. Today I want to take you through a full dynamic warm-up that we'll do with our golfers here at the Academy, give you a little bit of an understanding with a mic. I can talk you through some coaching points and what we're looking for and what we're working on when we're doing our warm-ups. Let's go ahead and get into the video, but go ahead and like, subscribe to the channel, stay up to date with notifications by clicking that bell in the top right hand corner. Okay, so one of the first things that we'll always do with our athletes is start on the ground. And one of the movements that I like to do with golfers is being able to disassociate the hips and the shoulders, make sure we're creating that separation through that upper body and that lower body. And to start with being on that ground, I'll work on an iron cross with athletes, really start to open out the hip. We're going to raise the foot up, come across the body and back, just really trying to focus on getting that disassociation of the hips and the shoulders. So as I'm taking my foot and over, my hips are following the foot, but my opposite shoulder is staying down. So if I show you to the other side, you'll see my right shoulder is going to stay down on the ground as much as I can and just separate the hips and the shoulders. So I'm really trying to feel that the outside of my hips are working. I'm separating the hips and the shoulders, really trying to feel I can get some separation and start to work through the outside of the hip. So iron crosses, we'll typically do maybe 10 reps on each side, a couple of rounds of this as we do it as a circuit. Once we've done that, we'll maybe flip it over into a quadruped position. We might go into a half kneeling or tall kneeling position, being able to get the athlete going from the ground up. But I really like this bird dog crunch. And so we'll get athletes, nice neutral pelvis, nice neutral spine. We'll extend the opposite arm, opposite leg, come into the center and really just focus on stabilizing through the trunk, through the hip, through the shoulder on the opposite side, creating some activation, maybe a little bit more of a stability component, but it's definitely worth exploring to create some activation. Again, we'll do maybe 10 reps on each side here, and we'll do this as a circuit, so 2 rounds. So once I've done here, I'll move on to that next exercise and then come back. So we talked about that separation piece or the disassociation of the hips and the shoulders. And once we've gone maybe with a lower body disassociation, I definitely like to then add an upper body disassociation. So what I'll have athletes do is go into this kind of quadruped position. We can kind of stress them to go a little bit lower, so sit down onto the heels a little more. From here, we'll take one hand and we're going to go ahead and reach on underneath, go into that flexed position at the hips, but really kind of stabilizing the hips as I go underneath. And that's where I'll start to focus more on the rotation of the shoulders. From here, I'll open out and we'll just go reps. So I'm trying to focus on getting my shoulder down, disassociate hips and shoulders. Again, more through a flexion here still. Again, those iron crosses were more flexion of the hip. Again, we're focused, same thing, flexing at the hips, rotating through that thoracic spine, disassociate hips and shoulders this way. Again, we'll go maybe 5 reps, 10 reps on each side. Just really focused on being able to rotate through the back. Big thing for golfers, obviously, any rotational athlete, we want to make sure that they're mobile through the hips, mobile through the thoracic spine, mobile through their shoulders. Again, like I mentioned, we've gone through that lying position or prone position, supine position. From here, we take it more of a quadruped, half kneeling, tall kneeling position. One thing we're working on at the minute is a shin box get up. So we're taking into this position here where the foot is relatively close to the thigh. We've got the foot behind us. Now from here, we want our athletes to try and maintain a tall spine. So I'm staying upright. And from here, what I'm going to focus on is driving my hips forward as I come up. So we want athletes to try not to use their hand. We want to try not to lose posture. So stay tall. I don't mind the hands out in front, but I want them to focus on driving up, squeeze at the top. We're working on that internal and external rotation of the hips as we're flexing and extending. So we're driving on up, extension of the hips, flexing down, working on that internal and external rotation, being able to just maintain that they're staying relatively tall with the spine. We'll get maybe 5 to 10 reps and we'll make sure we switch it over and get the other side. So again, I'm in that position where my foot is relatively close to the thigh. I've got that foot behind me, tall spine. I know that my left side is my difficult side, but again, tall spine. I can feel I'm activating already. From here, driving on up, Just get that work, internal, external rotation of the hip, being able to flex and extend up and down. So again, just nice and controlled, driving on up and back down. On through our ground-based work where we've started supine or prone on the floor. We've gone into that quadruped position, tall kneeling, half kneeling. We'll go up to standing, and this is where we give the opportunity to get a little more dynamic, or we can still focus a little bit more on stabilization. And so one thing that we're working on at the minute is a hip airplane. I really like this move. We've been doing a lot of work on the wall, but I'm trying to progress our athletes a little more to try and go away from something that can support us, just to kind of see where they are and kind of check in. So we'll take our athletes, get them to put their hands on their hips. From here, we're going to hinge on the hip. Now from this hinged position, I'm going to open out. So I'm going to externally rotate that left hip. And then from here, I'm going to internally rotate. And it's forcing me to work through a range of motion in my left hip without the use. And again, as soon as you lose it on the inside of that foot, your balance is going to go. So really trying to force people to stabilize through the ankle, stabilize through the hip, internal and external rotation. Whoa, not easy. As soon as you start to feel like you're losing your balance, you want to just recenter, come back in, and go again. There's a lot of work that's going on in the foot here. We'll get maybe 5 reps on each side, opening out and closing down that gap. Again, internal rotation of the right hip, external rotation of the right hip. I'm letting my shoulders be dictated by the movement by my hips rather than the other way around. It's very easy that we can just start rotating through the thoracic spine and feel like we're moving through a good range of motion, when in actual fact the hips aren't doing much. So I'm really trying to feel that my hip is controlling the movement, not my shoulders or my back. Again, once I've done maybe 5 reps, we'll come on out of it. Some athletes are still working on the wall, but there's different variations of this, but really trying to just feel that we're getting into that hinge position, creating some external and internal rotation of the hips, which is key for golfers to be able to create a good backswing and a good through swing through those hips. Finally, in this workout and this warm-up, we'll have our athletes get a little more dynamic. So we'll have them use the wall, we'll get them to go face on, and we're going to go with some lateral leg swings. So we focused a little bit on that hip mobility and stability, but we'll get our athletes to then go dynamic across the body with the foot, being able to just get a little more work through the inside and the outside of the hip, but be a little more dynamic. When we know that we're going to get our athletes going into jumping, throwing, we want to make sure that we're getting a little more dynamic to get them and their body and their nervous system moving a little bit faster. So we want them to be prepared that when we go into our jumps, that their body is warm and ready to go. When we're going into throws, we'll have them do a little more shoulder work, thoracic spine work, get them moving a little more dynamically to be able to then go into the throws as well. So it just depends on kind of what the focus is for that day. If it's a little more jumping, we'll probably spend a little more time on the lower body. If it's a little more throwing, we'll spend a little more time on the upper body. We always want to try and get a good balance of both, because here at the Academy, we'll train full body sessions. So athletes will be doing a lower body and an upper body exercise for ballistic work, so jumps and throws. But also we want to make sure that there's a little more emphasis on the throws than the jumps, maybe one week to the next. So it just depends on how we're kind of programming it. That's one big thing that we're considering when we're doing our warm-ups. All right, folks, there you have it. That's our dynamic warm-up. One of the dynamic warm-ups we're doing at the minute. A little bit more of a lower body dynamic focus with some upper body incorporated, maybe a little more emphasis on addressing imbalances with the upper body, but being able to focus on creating some separation of the upper body, lower body with a lower body emphasis, and a little more dynamic on the lower body with the leg swings. That's one of the warm-ups that we'll use with our athletes here. We'll run through maybe 2 rounds of that before we're going into our jumps and throws. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel. I hope that content helps you implement that warm-up into your routine. You're going to start to feel you're getting good separation, good addressing of the imbalances, and you're going to feel a lot better in your golf game. Take care.